This morning, the countdown to early voting, less than 24 hours away. Will Texas see the kind of turnout Georgia did? And which candidates might benefit from it? Battling misinformation, how confident should you be in Texas elections? Former Texas Secretary of State John Scott on what he will be watching for. The death row case of Robert Roberson has Republicans and Democrats that you wouldn't expect actually working together. Republican State Rep Lacey Hull from Houston on what she says the legislature must now do with the state's junk science law. And did Tuesday's debate change anything in the close race for U.S. Senate? Ted Cruz, the expert debater, but Colin Allred was not intimidated. The roundtable with a lot to say on it this morning.
Inside Texas Politics with Jason Whiteley starts now.
Good Sunday morning. I'm Jason Whiteley. A lot to get to over the next half hour, but let's start with the headlines this morning. The Texas election officially begins tomorrow morning. Polls open for early voting on Monday at 7 a.m. It's 2 weeks long. Early voting runs from Monday, October 21st to Friday, November the 1st. The last day to apply for a mail ballot is coming up here, October the 25th. And then Election Day, of course, Tuesday, November the 5th. You can check your county's election office to find a vote center closest to you. It looks like Texas has incorrectly removed some people from the voting rolls because they did not respond to a letter. Governor Abbott bragged about 6,500 people, non-citizens, he said, that were removed from Texas voting databases. A new investigation, though, shows the number was likely exaggerated. It was exaggerated and actually wrong in some instances. Turns out some U.S. citizens were incorrectly labeled as non-citizens or were removed from the rolls because they did not check the mail or did not actually respond to a letter they got. ProPublica, the Texas Tribune, and VoteBeat all worked on this together. Definitely worth a read this weekend. And the Texas Department of Public Safety just can't seem to protect our personal data. DPS said hackers stole information from more than 115,000 people with Texas driver's licenses last week. Names, addresses, social security numbers, and more. DPS reported it to the Attorney General's database and said it has not notified victims of what happened. 2 years ago, DPS was tricked into sending 3,000 replacement driver's licenses to an organized crime group. Let's start this morning, though, with that unprecedented event unfolding tomorrow in Austin. A death row inmate spared just hours from execution is now going to testify at the state capitol on Monday. Robert Roberson will appear before the Texas House of Representatives Criminal Jurisprudence Committee. Lawmakers there want to know why Roberson was not able to take advantage of a law they passed just a few years ago that might have given him a new trial. Republicans and Democrats actually banded together for this temporary reprieve, arguing that Roberson's conviction was based on junk science. State Rep Lacey Hull is on this House committee that will hear from Roberson tomorrow. She's a Republican from Houston. Representative Hull, thanks for being on the program with us. Many people are saying the state's 2021 junk science law should have applied in this case. Why do you think it did not?
Thank you for having me. We are unsure why the courts are and have not applied our junk science statute in Robert's case. It is very clear that the new evidence that he should get a new trial under the junk science statute, and that never happened. And so we can't speak as to why the junk science statute was not followed, but it's very clear that it has not been followed.
What kind of changes do you think lawmakers need to make when you return to Austin in January?
We aren't sure exactly what changes. For us, it seems pretty clear. The statute is clear as to what needs to be done here and how it needs to be followed. The court's just choosing not to do it.
Is there a refinement of language, do you think, that's needed? I mean, you said you think that the language is pretty clear in there, but judges just aren't doing it.
Right. And again, that's something that the Criminal Jurisprudence Committee is looking at, and we will continue to look at as we move closer to session, because this is supposed to grant relief for people and for people to be able to get a new trial. We don't want innocent people in prison, and we certainly do not want innocent people executed in Texas. The
Board of Pardons and Paroles unanimously rejected his case. The Texas Court of Criminal Appeals also rejected it. There'll be people watching this who say, listen, this case played out the way it was supposed to play out. Everything happened the way it was supposed to happen. What do you say to those folks?
I completely disagree. And if anyone has any questions, then you should read everything that has been filed, read the state, what they have filed, and read everything from Robert's attorney and what they have filed, and watch the House Criminal Jurisprudence Committee hearing that was held, because there is so much information there that clearly contradicts what the state says, from medical experts testifying to the lead investigator. Clearly, there is false information that is out there about Robert and what happened. And this was not blunt force trauma. This was not shaken baby. This little girl sadly died of natural causes.
What should we read into Democrats and Republicans working together on this? Folks that I wouldn't really think would work together on issues that have come together on this. What should we read into that?
About an innocent man being executed in our state. And so no matter where people stand on the death penalty, no one wants to see an innocent man being executed. So you have many of us, including myself, pro-life Republicans, who are out here because we don't want to see an innocent man being executed. Their parental rights concerns we see this happen all the time with medical child abuse and child abuse in general, where parents are falsely accused. It's just very rare that we see them on death row. And so this is, again, from across numerous different reasons, disability rights issues because he has autism. There's so many different things at play here as to why members from both parties, all different factions, have all come together to say this is wrong. He needs a new trial and we need to push pause.
Are you surprised then that the message really hasn't been received by the Pardon and Paroles Board, or the Court of Criminal Appeals?
It is surprising. And so it's clear to me that they are not looking at all of the information. They just can't be. There is no way that you can look at all of the information, everything that is out there, and think that he doesn't deserve a new trial.
Representative, we appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, let's bring in the roundtable to talk about the politics of this. Bud Kennedy is here from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. I am Mitra with us from Austin, the Texas Tribune, and Bernadine Steptoe, political producer at WFAA in Dallas. Guys, this is an extraordinary situation, as we all know here. Far left, far right Democrats both working together, Bud, to save this man. My question is, what happens after the testimony comes tomorrow?
Well, after the testimony, this restraining is in effect for 2 weeks. We'll see then what comes back. If it goes back to the Court of Criminal Appeals, the same judges will make the decision again on whether to proceed with that execution. You're dealing with 3 lame ducks that will not face the voters again, 2 other hardline judges. Would one of those lame duck judges change their mind? It was a 5-4 vote before. Would it be 5-4 to send it back?
To send it back again?
That would be the change.
Ian, you've covered politics a long time. Have you ever heard of something like this happening, where a man spared from death row, or the execution chamber, just within hours, now going to the state capitol to testify before lawmakers?
This is certainly unique in that way too, with the lawmakers in this hearing too. I mean, I think the State Representative Hull kind of really laid it out in saying, like, we don't, an innocent person should never be set for execution too. And it seems like there's clearly doubt here about what's going on. So the lawmakers, in a bipartisan way, politics is on the side here. This is about a person's life and questioning the grounds in which he was convicted. It's really a unique situation too. And it also just, again, raises questions too about the process that led us to this 11th hour deal that we're facing here.
And Bernadine, you raised a good point just before we went on a few moments ago about the bipartisanship of this.
I know actually, this is an example of how government should work. That you should have bipartisanship addressing certain issues that are important, especially when you have one where there's no recourse for Robert. And I say Robert because that's what the representative referred him to. But it's interesting because, and also let me tell you something else, Jason. It also shows that how crucially important it is to elect elected officials who are skilled, who understand processes, because what they did at the last hour was just unbelievable. Yeah. It read like a novel, just so unexpected. So it actually shows how government should work, regardless of what you think about the death penalty or whatever. It just shows.
And as Bernadine said, it was Republicans and Democrats working together at the last minute.
And a division between the right-wing Republicans, a division of Christian religious Republicans who some believe the Lord is a vengeful Lord, some believe he's a merciful Lord.
Yeah, I mean, Brian Harrison, Gene Wu in the same room, Nate Schatzline in the same room. I wouldn't normally put those two guys together, but great.
Joe Moody,
great point too about bipartisanship. A lot more ahead here, including this. When we come back here, Texas has mistakenly removed citizens from voter rolls because they did not respond to letters. Is there a better way the state should be doing this? One of our questions for former Secretary of State John Scott. And did the U.S. Senate debate change anything about that race? If Ted Cruz holds his lead, what's next for Colin Allred? Inside Texas Politics, back in a moment. Welcome back to Inside Texas Politics. You know, early voting does begin tomorrow morning, and more Texans than ever are now registered to vote this November. Our next guest is the former Texas Secretary of State John Scott, who took our questions on the upcoming election and that recent investigation about citizens removed from the Texas voter rolls. Mr. Secretary, good to see you again here.
Great to see you, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Early voting begins on Monday. How confident should I be in Texas elections?
I think extremely confident.
Really?
Yeah, I think that all the money and effort that goes into it, as well as all the people involved in it, their one goal is to have safe, secure, and fair elections.
Anything concern you going into early voting and just a few weeks away from Election Day?
You just hope people take the time to go vote. And I think that's the big thing that was always the great fear is all this effort, all these dollars are spent to share their message by the candidates, the infrastructure to conduct the elections. But what if people don't show up very often? And so it's kind of sad. 18
million registered voters now in Texas. That's a tremendous amount of voters. Do you think that suggests that we're going to see higher turnout?
I don't know. You know, the last presidential election, I think, was about 2/3, 66, a little over 66%. Yeah. The one before that was down around 60%. So I would be surprised if it surpasses the 2/3. I don't know if the same level of excitement is there as it was there the last election.
Come election night, what are you watching for? Which races are you going to have your eyes on?
I think there's 2 U.S. representative seats down in the Valley. I think there's a state Senate seat down in the Valley. Those would be the ones I would really be focused on as much as anything, because I'm really interested to see how the Valley, if it has changed at all, and if what happens when those races.
But Republicans made inroads down in the Valley. Do you think they're going to keep those seats, or what's going to happen there?
I think that's the magic question that everybody's looking for the answer for, Jason. I think at the end of the day, if they're able to flip that Senate seat from Senator LaMantia over, I think that is one that changes what happens in the next legislative session, because that should give the Republicans 20 seats if they win that, and that's critical.
How likely is that?
From what I've heard, it's more than a coin flip chance, so better than 50-50.
Do you think we'll know who won the presidential race on election night, nationwide?
Yes.
You think so?
Yes.
Why?
I think the polling on the exit polling is sophisticated enough to where we will have a high degree of certainty of who the winner was.
Last question. ProPublica, VoteBeat, and the Texas Tribune just released an investigation saying that U.S. citizens were incorrectly labeled as non-citizens or removed from the ballot because they did not respond to letters that the county administrators sent to them. I don't always go through every single piece of mail I get. Is there a better way to reach voters if there are questions about citizenship? Is there something else the legislature could do to prevent this from happening?
Well, I think State Affairs last week was looking into that very issue and trying to find out, is there a better way to identify someone when they sign up to vote? There's such an overlap from federal law with state law that's made it a little more difficult to implement, but I think if there's a better way, I think that's what they're going to work on this next session.
Mr. Secretary, thank you for the time.
Thank you, Jason, for having me.
The roundtable is ready when we come back here on Inside Texas Politics. And our podcast this week is an eye-opening look at Austin. Did it lose its magic that made the city so special, such a cool, hip place? Our guest on this week's episode of Y'all-itics has lived the change and has a brand new book out about it. This is one of my favorite episodes so far this year. Look for it wherever you get your podcasts.
This is Inside Texas Politics with Jason Whiteley.
All right, time now for Reporters Roundtable to put the headlines in perspective. And it was a big political week. We have Bud, Ian, and Bernadine back with us. Let's talk about the huge event that happened in this room that we were in right now. It was the U.S. Senate debate between Ted Cruz and Colin Allred. Bud, I want to start with you. We set aside extra time for this because we want to discuss this here. Did anything you saw in this room here change this race? It was neck and neck. It still is neck and neck.
I don't think anything changed the outcome. I think Allred voters were intensified and thought that they made a proud choice, that he stood his ground well in the debate. And I think Cruz voters were convinced and said, you know, this is the conservative viewpoint that we're looking for. This is what we need to go ahead with. You know, let's go out and vote. So I don't think it moved the numbers at all. I think there are very few undecideds in this race to begin with, and I think that we've come away that way with just a few people in the middle who are undecided.
And Ian, this was the largest audience that either two of these men are going to have before voters start casting ballots. What do you think? Does anything change at all? Because Allred certainly did not back down to an expert debater.
No, and I think Bud's right. You know, what is supporters of Allred, supporters of Cruz, it just kind of fortified the positions of where they stood. And there's, you know, it's hard to believe there's too many folks who haven't made up their mind, but they're, you know, whether they're talking about abortion or border issues or January 6th, I think a lot of what was exchanged, there were strong exchanges in the debate, but it also just ended up kind of, you know, fortifying where people were already standing. So it's largely kind of in place, you know, and we'll see where those kind of last few undecideds are, but there probably aren't as many of those.
I can't imagine there are, Bernadine.
Well, I don't think remember, we're 2 weeks out from an election?
Yeah.
And I don't think that you have a lot of people who are undecided, but I also think that what this debate showed, those few who are, that any independent viewers were looking at, okay, neither one actually won. It was almost a draw. So whichever one I choose, if I move past the extremism or the rhetoric or whatever, I'm going to get almost an equal in that respect. But at this point, most people have made up their minds.
Any moment, Bud, to you that just stood out? Because as a moderator here, I expected this to be a tense debate. It was a street brawl within the first few seconds.
Well, Jason, of course, we said it was, you know, for you, it was like having two trucks coming at you 100 miles an hour the whole night.
Yeah.
And it was just incredible, the level of energy. Obviously, the Colin Allred's discussion on January 6th was his brightest moment. I don't think we have the supply closet here in the studio, but you know, all the talk of, you know, when you look at Google, the Google trends, the number one trend was Cruz Cancun, and now there's also Cruz supply closet is one of the trends. And then Cruz is just consistent conservative views on the economy, on money, on spending, just able to enunciate very clearly what he's told us over and over for 12 years. I think that Cruz's consistent message was his strongest point.
Yeah, indeed so. Ian, anything really stand out to you looking back now?
Again, these were candidates who were really kind of coming in, really looking to kind of engage and really, as much as they could, try to kind of, you know, get some strong statements so they could speak to their supporters. I think they were largely speaking to people who were already supporting them, but they did come in. You could tell that that tension was palpable from the get-go.
Yeah, indeed so. And I'm not sure if any of them really landed a blow, Bernadine, against each other. But as Bud mentioned, the January 6th comment when Colin Allred saying to Ted Cruz, or, you know, giving his response to the question, and then Allred says to Cruz, "This is not funny. You're a threat to democracy." That was kind of a sobering moment, it felt like, in the studio.
Well, I think there was a lot of moments, but for me, the most surprising thing was how well Colin Allred did, because we knew that Cruz was going to come in with everything ready for Colin Allred, but he stood his ground, and he was just as effective as Cruz in terms of talking to his constituents. And I think that surprised me even more so, which it should not have, because he is a football player and he was
But he's a mild-mannered person. He's a calmer guy until what we saw on Tuesday night.
Well, that's true, but you can't be a calm person on a football field. But anyway, it was a very, very good exchange of ideas, exchange of what they wanted their constituents to hear, and they're ready for their people to go to the polls.
Jason, I'd like to see a scorecard of how many questions they actually answered. I think that was the question to Cruz about, exactly where he feels stands on abortion, trying to get Colin Allred to clarify the locker rooms question. I mean, sometimes it was a little difficult to get answers.
But we didn't expect them to. They haven't answered those questions the entire election cycle. So who expected it? And I think that you and Groma did an excellent job trying to hold them to those questions and getting them to answer it. But they're just skilled in not answering.
I didn't expect an answer, but I didn't expect them to ask, why are you asking me?
Which is what Senator Cruz asked me on the third time I asked him about abortion.
Yeah.
Let's talk about early voting starts tomorrow. And Bud, I saw a press release again just the other day from National Democrats saying they are investing more in Texas. Did Democrats really think they have opportunities to pick up these congressional seats in South Texas or any other pickups?
Well, obviously the primary need for them is to win the Allred race because they need a Democratic pickup in the Senate. That's why the Democrats are spending money here. You know, you could say maybe they're investing for the future. If they and let's look at what might happen here if Kamala Harris is not elected. If Donald Trump returns to the presidency, then naturally the midterm always goes against the party in power. So in 2 years, you might have a strong Democratic wave in Texas. The Democrats are trying to lay some little bit of foundation that they didn't have going into this election.
Ian, is this a hint of things to come? Because it seems like we're getting trickle from Democrats after, each election cycle here.
You know, you've seen a lot of tension between Texas Democrats and National Democrats in terms of National Democrats coming in for fundraisers and state Texas Democrats feeling like they're not investing in the state enough. You saw it was an interesting kind of exchange, too, at the convention this year. There were 10 or 11 people from Texas who got to speak on the main stage, but you had a lot of makers saying that, they need to support us more in between those main events. So that'll continue, but it does seem like National Democrats do have their eye more on Texas.
Good deal.
Moving forward.
Ian, we are out of time. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you again next Sunday.